The clinking of cutlery and half-hearted laughter filled the dinner table, as it always did on family nights. Same house, same people, same routine. But for me, Layla, it always felt like I was watching from behind a glass wall. Present, yet invisible. Tonight, the spotlight was once again on my brother Josh, who had just been promoted at a tech firm in San Francisco. Everyone clapped. My sister Melanie had recently returned from her Europe trip, first class, of course, and passed around photos of her adventures. Layla, my uncle said, barely turning toward me, you still working at that shelter? His tone had that familiar sting of mockery, laced with confusion, like he couldn't quite figure out why I'd choose to waste my life. Yes, uncle. Still there, I replied softly. He chuckled. Such a bright girl. What a shame. They all laughed politely. Even Dad didn't say a word in my defense. He took a sip of tea and muttered under his breath, she's always been a dreamer. But dreams don't pay the bills. I swallowed hard. Nobody knew that just last week, I'd stayed up all night with a 15-year-old girl who had run away from an abusive home. Nobody cared that I spent my days helping those who had nothing, who no one else wanted to see. They only cared about job titles, dollar signs, and who sat in which office chair. I tried to eat, but the lump in my throat wouldn't let me. Then, Dad's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, blinked in surprise. My boss, he said, puzzled. Why would he be calling me at this hour? He excused himself and stepped outside to take the call. We continued eating, or at least, they did. Minutes later, he came back inside, looking different. Pale. Unsteady. Layla, he said slowly, he wants to speak with you. Everyone froze. Me? I asked, confused. He handed me the phone, his hand trembling slightly. Hello. I answered cautiously. A calm, warm voice replied. Miss Layla Barnes? Yes, that's me. This is Edward Langston. I'm your father's supervisor. I recently had the honor of meeting a young woman named Carla. She's a former resident at the shelter where you work. I sat straighter in my seat. She spoke of you with tears in her eyes. Said you saved her life, not just by giving her food or a place to stay, but by listening. By believing in her. By helping her believe in herself. I blinked, my throat tightening. I wanted to thank you personally, ma'am. The work you're doing, it's powerful. And deeply needed. That one word, ma'am, struck deeper than any applause I'd ever heard. Not just because of the respect it carried, but because for the first time, someone saw me. I whispered, thank you. After the call ended, I turned toward the table. The room was silent. All eyes on me. Dad looked stunned. What, did he say? Someone asked. I repeated it, word for word. Including the part where he called me ma'am. My father blinked. Slowly, almost brokenly, he said, I didn't know. I didn't know what you were really doing. That's because, I said gently, no one ever asked. 2 weeks later. I received an email from Edward Langston. Layla, I hope this message finds you well. I'd love the chance to meet you in person and hear more about the work you're doing. Your story moved me deeply. If you're open to it, may I take you for coffee? I hesitated. Was this just professional curiosity? A thank you gesture? Still. I said yes. We met at a small cafe near the shelter. I expected someone older, maybe Dad's age. But Edward Langston was in his early 30s. Young, sharp, intelligent, but not arrogant. He was warm, sincere, and surprisingly humble. You know, he said, stirring his coffee, I've met leaders of companies, CEOs, politicians, but you're the first person I've met who leads without even trying. We talked for hours. About the shelter, the people we served, the system that failed them, and dreams for change. I expected a single coffee. But he kept showing up, sometimes with donations, sometimes with books, sometimes with nothing but a desire to listen and help. One afternoon, he spent 4 hours helping us clean the shelter's basement, sitting on a concrete floor fixing broken shelves. The children began calling him Uncle Ed. It had been 3 months since that unforgettable call. This time, I walked into dinner with a quiet kind of pride. I wore no expensive jewelry, but I felt rich, in purpose, in confidence, and in something new blossoming in my heart. The table was once again filled. But this time, something felt different. Softer. Warmer. Midway through dinner, the doorbell rang. Dad got up to answer it, and stopped cold. Standing there was Edward, dressed in a neat navy blazer, holding a bouquet of lilies. "Mr. Barnes," he said calmly, "good evening, sir. I hope I'm not intruding." Everyone looked up. Conversation stopped. Edward stepped inside and looked around the room. Then he turned to my parents and said, "I came here not as a boss, but as a man who's come to admire your daughter, for her courage, her compassion, and her soul." He took a slow breath. "I would be honored, if you would consider my request to ask for her hand in marriage." My sister's glass clinked against the plate. My brother's fork froze halfway to his mouth. My mother gasped softly. And Dad stood silently. Eyes blinking, mouth slightly open. Edward looked directly at him. "I respect you, sir. And I respect her even more. She's a woman of incredible grace. I see her not as an employee's daughter, but as the partner I've been waiting for." Dad turned to me, his voice barely audible. "Layla, is this what you want?" I met Edward's eyes. I thought of the shelter, the children, the long nights, and the kindness in this man's voice. I smiled. "Yes, Dad. I do." 1 year later. We got married in a small ceremony at the same shelter where we first met. Carla, the young woman I helped, was my maid of honor. She's now a full-time social worker, helping others as I once helped her. Edward and I run a non-profit together now, focused on transitional housing, mental health support, and empowering women who've been silenced. My father, now retired, volunteers on weekends. My mother bakes pies for the kids. And my siblings? They watch with awe, because the sister they once called nothing now builds everything that matters. Don't measure a person's worth by their paycheck, their title, or how loud their accomplishments sound. Sometimes, the ones who build in silence are the ones changing the entire world. And sometimes, the people you overlooked at the dinner table are the ones others will one day call, ma'am.